Hello, everybody. Welcome to Make Dinner with Me, Virtual Cooking Experience Edition. I am super excited. Typically, when I do these types of classes, I tend to do these right in my nanny family's home because they have this big, beautiful, massive, state-of-the-art kitchen. And I just have a normal, regular, everyday person's kitchen. But I thought it'd be cool so you guys could kind of see what my kitchen looks like, what I have to work with. I'm working with nothing fancy for the recipes today, and I'm just really excited. So first thing that we're gonna wanna do is we wanna preheat that oven, but before we do that, I wanna first show you the recipes. I wanna remind you where to find them in the group, and then from there, we'll kinda go through and we will get started. So let me take this up and let me screen share for a second. So when this does decide to pop up, you are going to see that inside the Inner Circle Facebook group. For the time being, I'm going to keep the recipes pinned right here for the next 24 to 48 hours. After that time frame, you will make sure you will get a replay email from me with the recipes in case you missed it, in case you want to redo the cooking class on your own time, or you just like the step-by-step guides, or you were cooking and you weren't really paying attention to some of the tips and kitchen secrets that I'm going to share. Whatever that looks like, when you click on these the chicken tender one is for sure in the recipe book. The garlic and herb roasted potatoes is not yet. So just know that that one's not there. But we're going to be doing homemade chicken tenders, which are my absolute favorite. And we can do these in a variety of ways. We can either do them with Greek yogurt or mayo, and you can do them with almond flour or normal flour. Today, I'm going to be using normal flour, and then I got out mayo and I got out Greek yogurt because I haven't quite decided which version I want to do. When we get to there, I will let you know the benefits of each and why sometimes I choose one over the other. That other recipe that we're going to be doing today is going to be the garlic and herb roasted potatoes, carrots, and zucchini. So I've got my carrots, I've got baby potatoes. If you don't have baby potatoes, I did note in there that you can just use normal potatoes. We just want to cut them up really small so they are about baby potato size. So with that, make sure you've got your recipe here in the next couple minutes. I want you to take some time to make sure you've got everything out, and then we're gonna get started. So let me stop screen sharing. We'll bring the Zoom screen back up. Okay. So I loved these cooking demos. So what you're gonna see me do throughout this time is you may see me flip off to the side and start. I do have my phone sitting right over here, and it's sitting over here so that it can get an overshot view of some of the recipes. So like when we go to make that first recipe, I'm gonna go over, I'm gonna click the phone just so you know I'm not stepping away for any other reason other than that. But first thing we need to do is preheat your oven to 400 degrees. So I don't know about you, but my oven takes forever. So I'm gonna get it preheated. We're gonna get that going. And as that is going, the next thing we wanna do is you wanna make sure you've got a few cookie sheets. So personally, you don't have to line them. I like to line them because it leads to easier cleanup. You can use tin foil or aluminum foil, making sure that the shiny side is up because that's going to be the side that makes it not sticky. The downside, so the perk to aluminum foil is you most likely not have any mess left on the cookie sheet because nothing will soak through. The downside is sometimes things will stick to the tin foil even if you do shiny side up. So if you don't want to have to be scraping anything off and you don't want to lose some of the flavor or you don't want your potatoes to stick or the cheese that comes on that we're going to put in those chicken tenders, make I would recommend you using parchment paper. Benefits of parchment paper, nothing is going to stick to it. It's awesome. Downside, it's a little bit more messy to maneuver, as you can see over here. And it says easy cleanup, but I every single time I use it, if I'm using any sort of oil, which when we cook, we tend to use either spray or oil or something, my cookie sheet is always a little greasy. So I just have to do a quick like rinse and wipe. Still so much better than not having anything down, but totally up to you and what your option is. So making sure that you have your cookie sheets lined. If you have bigger cookie sheets, I recommend grabbing them. I only have two sizes, which means I'm probably going to end up doing two different batches. We're going to do the first batch, get as much as on here, and then if I have to do another batch, I'll do it offline. You guys don't need to see me sitting around and wait for all of this to be done. But so we want to make sure that we've got our cookie sheets lined, and those are off to the side. The next thing that I absolutely love to do, and you can do this one of two ways. You can either bring your trash can over I personally like to grab a Tupperware container and I like to put it on the counter because we're going to be peeling some carrots. If you have baby carrots instead of big ones, that works too. You're going to just have them. If you have these big carrots, we're going to want to take the peel off. And this peel then just ends up on the counter. So this is like my waste bucket. This saves me from going to the trash. This allows my space to stay nice and clean and all of that type of stuff. So also, as we are coming into our first recipe, we are going to do our vegetable recipe first. We're going to prep it and we're going to put it in the oven because once it's in the oven, it needs 20 minutes and it will take us a little bit. It'll take us about 10-15 minutes to do the chicken tenders. Once those chicken tenders are done, we'll put those in the oven for 20 minutes. Once we've pulled out the veggie recipe and we've put the second part in. So we're going to try to time it exactly. Like I said, depending on your stove, you can also do your chicken tenders in the air fryer, depending on what you have available. We'll walk through it as we get closer. But I did pick up from Aldi some fresh thyme and some rosemary. This was actually relatively cheap today. I want to say it was like $1.30 for each of these, which I feel like is cheaper than normal. If you don't have fresh, you can use rosemary, dry rosemary like seasoning, or honestly, Italian seasoning works just great. Just got a little bit more than that, but yeah. So you choose whatever option is best. I'm probably gonna do a kind of variety of both just so you guys can see what it all looks like. So we're gonna get started. I want you to make sure that you've got a good knife. If you need a peeler, grab your peeler. And you are also going to want a big bowl. And I know this is not the best angle, but this is what we are working with today. So as I cut something, I'm gonna pick it up and show you kind of the size dimensions so you know what it looks like. But I did that first one because I wanted to make sure everything worked good. I'm gonna start this camera over here just so my hands can be seen. But we're gonna start by rinsing our zucchini, rinsing our carrots and peeling them, and then we're gonna move into the potatoes. So I like to rinse my zucchini because it is very watery. So I like to rinse it and then let it sit before I go and cut it up. So we are gonna get everything prepped here. Awesome. Okay, so if you have zucchini, you can also use summer squash. The nice part about the recipes that I use is a lot of things are interchangeable. You are not set in stone of like, oh, you have to use zucchini. No, if you don't have zucchini, don't use it or use summer squash or use something else. Like I'm not picky. So I got my zucchini there. Next one I'm gonna do, just because it takes the longest, I have measured out a pound of medium carrots. These are large carrots, but this is a pound. That's all that matters as long as you've got a pound. We want them cut into 2-inch pieces, and it says scrubbed and cleaned. I like to cut the ends off. You can rinse them. I go through stages if I'm gonna rinse them or not. Because I'm taking the skin off, and that's the part that's really dirty. I don't get overly cautious about that, especially like if they're in your own garden. These ones are not. These are Aldi. But so what I tend to do is I cut all my ends off, and I did just get this food scale from Amazon. And I bought the food scale partly because I was actually really curious about how much protein I was consuming. Was I consuming enough? Was I consuming too much? And it's been really eye-opening. And it was really nice today because I got a big thing of chicken and I needed to measure it out. Same with these carrots. So making sure we're taking all the skin off. I'm gonna take all the skins off before I cut them. And if you wanna open a bottle of wine and have a glass, I do have a long drink over here that probably once we get into that chicken tender time is when you will see me tap into that. But I got this peeler from Aldi. For those of you who don't know me, Aldi is about the only place that I ever shop at. If I don't have to go into Meijer, I won't. I actually went to Aldi twice today because I had to get some of the ingredients for tonight. And I got home. And so I walked in and I was only going to get the things on my list. But then I was like, oh, I need sourdough bread. I need things like that. And my hands got too full and I sat all my stuff down next to the potatoes so I could rearrange my hands and make sure everything was like able to be carried. And I totally walked out without grabbing potatoes. So I had to turn around and the checkout lady, she was awesome. She was like, you're like the third one in line today that has been back in here. And it was only 9:15 and they open at 9. So a lot of us this morning were apparently forgetting what we needed to grab. So getting all these peeled. One of the nice parts about this is I could have had all this prepped. I could have just taken you through, but it is fun to kind of work through some of this with other people. Um, I love meal prepping with others. I love also meal prepping like Sunday football in the fall when the Lions are on. As long as it's not an evening game, usually if it's like that 1 o'clock game, I will do all of my lunch prep because our TV is right over here. So I can watch the game, prep all the food for the week. And I just tend to do more prepping in the winter or in the fall, winter time than I do in the summer because we're home more. So if you are watching on Facebook right now and you're following along there, drop hashtag live in the comments. Let me know you were there. If you were watching the replay later on, I know a lot of you are traveling this week or you, it's the first official week of summer. So life is a little bit crazier than normal because you're right into a new schedule. Okay, so we've got all of our carrots peeled. Next thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna put my peeler to the side is I like to chop them first this way and then I like to have them. I find that if the carrot is too long, it tends to roll on me. And for instance, this one right here is really thick, so I end up quartering these ones. You want to have your food be about the same size. What that's going to do is it's going to allow for equal cooking all the way through. If you are not, for instance, if I put this in there and I put this in there, this one's going to take a whole lot longer to cook, and this one's going to be way too done by the time this one is. So it's important that as we are thinking about our potatoes and we're thinking about our zucchini and our carrots today, it's not a precise science. And that is what I love about cooking rather than baking is baking. We have to be a little bit more specific. Cooking, I can just throw things together. And as long as I like all the ingredients individually, I can guarantee I will like them when they're all together. So once we've got all of our carrots cooked here, this is where, or our carrots cut, not cooked. Once we have them cut, I'm gonna make sure to get all of the little carrot peels off so I don't get those mixed in with the next thing. These are so cute. So this recipe is a little bit longer, but think about we are adding 2 pounds of carrots, or we're adding a pound of carrots. We are adding 12 ounces of zucchini, which I found was like um, they weren't small, but they were just a little bit bigger than small. I'll show them to you again when we get closer. But I noticed that this recipe has a ton of vegetables in it, which I love. And it's got little mini potatoes, which I don't know about you, but I love mini potatoes. I think they taste better. You just get the skin and the crunch around all of it. So after that, what we want to do is we want to grab our 1 1/4 pounds. This one right here is 24 ounces. And this is where I don't do math. This is where I just put these on the scale and we'll figure out how many pounds there are. So this is 1 pound and 8 ounces. So just about 1 1/4. So good to go. These right here also say that they are triple washed. So I don't need to wash these anymore. But what I do need to do is I need to halve these. So we need to take them and we need to cut them in half. And if there's any like weird spuds on them, we want to make sure that we cut the spuds off, like that little thingy right there. I'll cut that off. Then I just cut in half, just like this, and pop them in. And making sure that when they do go into your bowl, they're separating and they're not staying together. Because we're gonna mix some olive oil and some seasonings with them. And if they're stuck together, they're not gonna Gonna be kind of challenging for the seasoning to get in them. If you've noticed that your baby potatoes are maybe not super baby and they're more like medium or toddler sized potatoes, make sure that you cut them up so they're just a little bit smaller. These ones are like a normal baby size, but if I did have one in here, and that's my oven finally preheated. If I did have one that was bigger, I would just quarter it. So cut it in half and then cut each half in half again. And this is gonna make 5 servings. So you are gonna have plenty for tonight, plenty for tomorrow, and possibly even plenty for tomorrow at dinner, depending on how many of you are feeding. Tonight it's just me at home, so we will have lots of leftovers. Okay. So we've cut the potatoes, we've cut the carrots. Next thing we want to do is we want to put 2.5 tablespoons. This is what it looks like. We want to put 2.5 tablespoons of olive oil. I just buy the Aldi. I know there's stuff going around about higher quality olive oils. Totally up to you and your preference. I just grab whatever. This is usually what we buy, or we buy one that's in a glass bottle. So we're gonna do about 2.5 tablespoons. 1, 2, somewhere in between. That's gonna go there. And then we want to season. And this is where if you've got like the loose rosemary and the loose thyme, go for it. If you wanted to use your Italian seasoning, I am going to use this because I have it. And in case you've never used this before and you purchased it specifically for today, I'm going to make sure that you know how to do it. So one of the things we want to do is we want to pull all of these off the leaf. Like we don't want the leaf from, I actually had to look this up. So we're going to pull it all off. It kind of just slides all off that way. Oh, it smells so good. And for this, I'm going to just start with one stalk here because all we want is a tablespoon. So one of these full. So I like to bunch it and then I try to roll it as best as I can. And then cutting it up into really itsy bitsy pieces. And you will have some that are bigger, and that is the downside to some of this fresh stuff is a little bit harder to get everything the same size, but that's okay. Let's see. That's about it, give or take. I'm gonna push this in there. Probably add a little bit more if I wanted to, which I am, just a little bit. Rosemary always kind of smells like a Christmas tree to me. Only the fresh stuff though. I don't feel like the dried stuff ever smells like it, but the fresh stuff does. So that goes in there. And then the thyme is the same thing, about a tablespoon. Trying to pull this stuff off. I believe so. It's a great question. I pre-washed this already and I dried it back out. The question is, I'm not sure if this is correct way. I'm gonna be completely honest, but I'm just gonna cut the stalks and all and just mince it up. It's all washed. As long as it's small enough, it's not gonna matter. This is where I tend to just for fun. I'm gonna throw just a little bit of Italian seasoning because it's one of my favorites. I'm gonna throw a few dashes of that. Awesome. Now what we're gonna do is we are going to mix it all together. You can either use your hands or you can use a spatula, it doesn't matter. But we're gonna mix it all together so everything is evenly coated here. And that's the key, is we want everything nice and evenly coated. So the only thing that we still have to add to this later on, so you know kind of what your cookie sheet's gonna look like, is the zucchini. So think about your zucchini size. Think about, is your cookie sheet gonna be big enough for you to put all of this on there? Personally, mine is not. So I'm going to take about half of this, trying to separate equal parts carrots to potatoes. And we're gonna put that off to the side. Like I said, I will do that is what that looks like. Next thing we're gonna do is we are gonna pop it in the oven for 20 minutes and let it roast. I recommend that you have a cook that you've got one of your racks about the middle height. We don't want one all the way up. We don't want one all the way down. You want them like evenly spaced right there in the middle. So I'm gonna put this in here. And one of the things you will notice is when we do our veggies first, what that allows us to do is not have to get a new cutting board when it comes time for our meat. So I'm gonna put this in the oven. I'm gonna put that on the top shelf. Timer, 20 minutes. Perfect. So while that is cooking for 20 minutes, next thing we are gonna do is, just so we are prepped and ready, typically, if you did use all of this, what's gonna happen is you're gonna put our zucchini in here. I am gonna put my zucchini in here to get the seasoning and the olive oil and stuff, but then I'm just gonna pull the zucchini pieces out that I want when I have to put it on there. For you, your bowl should be empty if you have a big enough cookie sheet or if you use two. And then you're just gonna put your zucchini in and use whatever's left in the bowl. So usually when I cut these, everybody's got their own preference. So this one right here wants us cutting these trimmed and cut into 1-inch pieces. So this is about 1 inch. I just got my hair cut earlier today, and I always think it's hilarious what 1 inch is when you talk about doing your hair. So I'm gonna just put them in here, mix them all up with the same exact, and like I said, I'm just gonna pull them out when I'm just gonna pull out the zucchini pieces, because if I were to just dump this whole thing in the next time, they're all gonna cook at different rates. Zucchini does not take very long to cook. Okay, so that's all mixed in, which is awesome. I'm gonna wash my hands again. You can also use gloves, depending on how, if you like your hands getting messy or not. You can always put gloves on. I will sometimes do that. I just don't have any at this point, so that's why I did not. Okay, gonna put those there. The last little piece that we gotta do is we gotta take 4 cloves of garlic. Cloves are 1, 2, 3, 4. The pieces are cloves, and we're gonna mince them. So if you have like a garlic press, that works really well. I do. It's not very good though, so I tend to just chop it up on my own. What you can also do, if you wanted to separate those, you could have put the zucchini, you could have put the rest of your potatoes and carrots like in a separate bowl that was clean, and then put your zucchini in. And it says 4 cloves. I measure garlic different. I like extra garlic. So typically I get all the skin off. And then what I try to do, garlic's one of those funny ones that it just kind of depends on the day, but I tend to smash it so it's nice and flat. And when you smash, if you kind of roll it away, so for instance, this one right here, I'm gonna lay this way and I'm gonna smash and roll forward. What that's gonna do is it's gonna kind of unroll it, and it's gonna make it a little bit easier to mince. And then I kind of line them up, kind of like we did some of those spices. And then anytime you are going to be using a knife and be chopping like this, always bring your fingers all the way up. And some of you may know this. I know some of you are newer to cooking though. So it is important that we keep our hands safe. Technically, when we're cutting other things, we should be grabbing with our nails so that if the knife comes down, it hits your knuckle before it hits all the other things, your end of your fingers. And garlic will be a little sticky. And something else that you can do, you can technically prep all of this and put this all in a bowl together, or put this in a Ziploc baggie with your olive oil, with your seasoning, with everything, and keep it in a Ziploc baggie completely prepped. So all you have to do day of is put it on the cookie sheet and cook it. But remember, we do want to pull out that zucchini portion. So ideally 2 different Ziploc baggies. Ziploc baggie with your potatoes and your carrots, Ziploc baggie with your zucchini and your garlic. And then once one of them's done cooking, put the other one on top, and so on and so forth. So because I want to keep my garlic separate, because I don't want to put my garlic in with my potatoes and carrots when I do the second round, because garlic will also burn very quickly. It's kind of like, it's when you put it on the stove, and if you put it on too early, it will get burned, but your food, so you'll get kind of like a burnt garlic taste instead of like a fresh and yummy garlic taste. So I'm gonna put my garlic in my little bowl here, just so it's here. Okay. So we've got everything prepped for this. The nice part is once those come out, we're gonna add the zucchini, we're gonna add the garlic, where we can drizzle with a little bit more olive oil if we feel like we need to, salt, pepper, and then we're good, and that will go back in for 20 minutes. So now that that is in there, what we are gonna do is we're gonna start looking at our chicken. And before we cut our chicken, we're gonna do our dry ingredients. And you're gonna want 2 bowls. One is gonna be your wet, which is going to be your mayo or your Greek yogurt, and your dry ingredients are gonna be your flour, your Parmesan, your ranch seasoning, salt, pepper if you'd like. Yes, all of that. I wanna make sure I wasn't missing something. So I like to do dry ingredients in that little bit bigger of a bowl. And if you wanna flip to that next recipe, you can. Awesome. Okay, so we need 1 cup of mayo or Greek yogurt. You can actually measure this, or honestly, I just guess. The Greek yogurt or the mayo. The benefits of the Greek yogurt is it is lower in fat, higher in protein. The downside is it's not as savory because it's a little bit more tart. So I'm going to use Greek yogurt just because I've been focusing lately a little bit more on my protein intake as well as my fat intake. I noticed that I consume a lot of fat because I love a lot of cheese. So I'm trying to be a little bit more self-conscious of that. But you can also use mayo. I use just the Aldi brand. I think it tastes delicious. So right there in the bowl, what we're going to do is once we cut our chicken strips, we're going to dip them in here. Then we'll dip them in our dry. For our flour, we do kind of want to measure this because we want the ratio to be good. So you can either use normal flour or you can use almond flour. We're going to need about 3/4 cup. And this is where I kind of do some eyeballing because it's sometimes, depending on your chicken slices, you may have to make more dry ingredients. Sometimes you're good to go. Sometimes you'll have a little bit left over. After we have done the almond flour or white flour, up to you, we want to make sure we've got 2 tablespoons. And I'm going to grab a different tablespoon here. And you can make your homemade ranch seasoning if you want. I just buy the big container. I know people that buy like the really big one from Costco. Totally up to you. This one's lasted me forever. Probably expired, honestly. Yeah, only by a month. It's all good. And then I don't tend to add salt, but I tend to add pepper. I just like the flavor palette, so I'll usually just go around till you can kind of see it on there, like nothing crazy. Remember, you can never take things away, you can only add them. So don't get too crazy. And then the final thing that we need is Parmesan cheese. You can do it with this. I don't recommend it because the pieces are so small that it kind of gets lost in the flour. But you can if you're absolutely desperate. The normal shredded Parmesan cheese is honestly what I think the best is. You need 1.5 cups to 2 cups. I believe this is 2 cups if I think about it. Give or take. Okay, perfect. Yep. So that's about a cup. I'm just going to throw that in there to start, just in case I do need to make another batch. Then we want to get a fork, mix it all together so that there's a good ratio, because once we dip that chicken in our Greek yogurt or mayo, we are then going to dip it in here. And that's going to create a nice light breading. So we got those there. Next thing we're going to move on to is going to be that chicken. So this is my chicken breast. You could buy chicken tenderloins. You are more than welcome to. I like to cut my fat off. And also when I'm doing that, so yeah, you can buy chicken tenderloins. I find that the price point for chicken breast is a little bit better. There is a little bit more work involved, so totally up to you. What I also find is if they're thick. So these ones over here, for sure, these are super thick. I'm gonna butterfly them and then I'm gonna make them into chicken strips. This one's pretty thin here. We want them the same thickness. It doesn't matter the length of them per se. So if you've got one that's 1 inch long and one that's like 4 inches long, not as big of a deal, but we want the thickness across all of them to be the same so they bake really evenly. So I just cut into strips here. And I will cut all of mine before I bread and get all messy, because you will notice gonna get messy. And that's my nanny kids help me with this one, specifically the little girl. And I give her one of the steps. So I usually will cut the chicken, and then from there, I'll dunk it like in the mayo. So I'll cut it all and then I'll dunk in the mayo and then I'll put it in the dry mixture for her. And then she will bread it around and then move it onto the cookie sheet. So when you butterfly, I like to start with thick end away from me. Knife comes here, hand goes flat, thumb up so you don't get yourself. And running that knife all the way through so you can get as close as you want. So these are going to be more equal in size to the ones we just cut. Then cutting them into strips here. And if you've got little kids and you want to do smaller size, go for it. I don't really have a precise length, honestly. I think in the recipe, I have a precise length. I really don't. But I just try to make sure they're all about the same size as best as I can. Thickness, width, all of that, just so it evenly cooks. This was about 2.5 chicken breasts. So depending on where you get your breasts from, and I say 2 pounds, this is a little, I want to say this is over by like a couple ounces, not very much though. So I'm gonna put this back on here to give myself more room. Same thing, nice big one here. Big side, whatever side's gonna be the most comfortable to push through. Open it up, finish the cut. This is where I notice there's some grizzly stuff we don't want. I will say all these chicken breasts are massive. They are massive. Like I think in this pack today for $11, I got like 7 chicken breasts, and they're all this size. So if you are looking to save money, I know I talk about Aldi all the time, but Aldi is a phenomenal place to go. I walked out of there for $30 today with potatoes, zucchini, eggs, rosemary, thyme. What else did I buy? Sourdough bread. had kind of a smorgasbord of things today. Um, okay, so now that we've got all of the chicken cut, I'm gonna take this cutting board because I'm actually gonna save this because I'm gonna show you a trick. Depending on what your time is like and how you're trying to make these, I'm gonna first show you the original way to make these. And the original way to make these is by individually dipping every single one of them in the mayo or yogurt, and then putting them in the dry stuff and putting them on the cookie sheet. So you can do it that way, or at the end, which typically I will start doing it the real way, but then I get kind of not bored, but I get annoyed with the process because it can take long, especially if you're making a really big batch. So we got this. For the time being, I am going to move this way. So we're going to take the chicken tender, pick it up, kind of put it in the yogurt. I like to use a spoon. Your hands are going to get messy. This is where gloves does boil down to be really nice. Want to make sure everything's coated. And then you're going to put it in the dry. And you want to get as much to stick to it as possible. I do find the mayo thing stick to it a little bit easier. And almond flour seems to be a little bit lighter. But here it is. You've got your Parmesan, your ranch seasoning, the flour that is there. Then you just kind of go through, do them all. I will most of the time like wash my hands in between because between the stickiness of the Greek yogurt and the dry ingredients, it makes like this paste that I'm not a fan that it is on my fingers that way. But it's just what we wash your hands for. Not a big deal. And yes, I gave you measurements, and yes, we kind of followed them. Part of the reason that I don't always follow them to a T is I may not always have 2 pounds of chicken. I may just have a chicken breast. And when I'm doing it more kind of like on the scratch, on the fly, I don't want to have leftover batter that's been contaminated with raw chicken, or I don't want to waste yogurt. So I typically under measure out them because I can always create more. And you're going to see that this right here is also going to have some leftovers because I'm not going to be able to fit everything on this cookie sheet, and that's okay. You can also, so the recipe does say for oven. I do believe I've got directions on there for maybe I don't. I'm looking over at it right now. You can also do them in the air fryer. So depending on what my day looks like, I will do these and I'll pop them in the air fryer. They take the same amount of time, same temperature, 400. And sometimes I just don't need a big cookie sheet. If I'm only doing 1 chicken breast instead of 2.5, it's just the air fryer is just nice. Or if the oven's occupied like it is today, but I want to kind of keep the ball rolling, I will also just throw half in the air fryer, half in the oven for that reason. So as we are going through, you want to make sure there is some separation between them. Scrape your fingers if you need to. Remember plain Greek yogurt. Do not use vanilla Greek yogurt. I guess I did not specify that, but making sure that you're using plain Greek yogurt. I don't know what vanilla would taste like, but I don't recommend it. So the next thing that I will do sometimes is just so you can kind of see the fast forward version is I will take this chicken and I'll essentially put it on here just like this. I already had 2 pieces in here, so we're just gonna add it. I'll scrape out. And yes, I'm gonna need more yogurt. And I just get all of it wet here. Sometimes it's easier than actually dipping. It just kind of depends on what you're feeling, honestly. Like, depends on how much mess you want to make. I realized I should probably take my ring off. I put it back on, but oh, I'm gonna grab a little bit more Greek yogurt. Actually, I'm gonna finish this one out and then I'm gonna do my last little bit in mayo. So mix it all together so everything is nice and wet. Sometimes you can either throw it back in the bowl to make sure that everything is coated and you're not wasting anything. And then that's when we dip, kind of move it around, push it together. I do find though that when we do it that way, not as much will stick to the chicken because it's not as thick. So you really got to be a little bit generous with the amount because that's your fat. That's the thing. It's like dropping in an egg white type of situation. Perfect. So that is our 20-minute timer. I'm going to do one more chicken tender here so I can fill up my sheet. And you should at least have one cookie sheet full of chicken tenders. What we're going to do is I want you to place your cookie sheet, your one cookie sheet that is full, on top of your oven just for a minute. Because we're going to pull out the cookie sheet that is currently in there, and we're going to put that zucchini and that garlic on it. So, oh, they look delicious. They smell good. That's what they look like. Looking good already. I'm just going to slide that out. Put this down for a second. Try not to let anything touch each other. So here. And then because my hands are clean, I'm gonna pull out those zucchinis that we were talking about half of them. So that's what I'm doing here. That seems about right. Yeah, my carrots are starting to feel perfect. And then we can salt to pepper if you'd like. This is the time. Take some of that garlic. I'm splitting mine in half because I'm only doing, because I'm splitting the batch in half. So I got that. Sprinkle a little garlic on top. Perfect. If it's looking a little dry, like maybe you didn't add enough olive oil, add some olive oil to that. Easy peasy. And then from there, we're going to pop it back in the oven for 20 minutes, I believe. Let me double check the recipe. 20 more minutes. Perfect. Yep. So I'm going to pop this back in the oven, and I'm actually going to put this one on the bottom rack because it was on the top originally. So I'm going to put this on the bottom, and then our chicken can go on the rack that this was just on. And luckily, our chicken only needs 15 to 20 minutes. The bigger your pieces, the more time it's going to need. So I'm going to do 15 minutes to start. Because maybe you cut your veggies a little thin, so they don't need the full 20 minutes. Especially when we're doing something half and half, I always try to make the second half a little bit shorter, just so I don't overcook anything. And for your chicken, you can definitely go through and do it the monitor. I've cooked enough chicken. I just kind of know when it's done. I'll show you what it looks like when it's there. But so while we're doing that, this right here is all set. So once that comes out and I get that veggie off the sheet pan, I'm gonna pull this and I'm gonna put this stuff on. For now, we're gonna keep working on our chicken tenders. So typically what I do is I grab this parchment paper, especially when you don't have a cookie sheet. Pull it out, and you're just gonna set it on the counter, and you're gonna pretend the counter is your cookie sheet. And then we will transfer it. So let me move this because I'm gonna go back to the old school way. So I've got that there. If you feel like you need a little bit more Parmesan, add that. Maybe add a little of that. Like I said, there's no rhyme or reason to this. It's just fun. Mix it all together. I will find though that at the bottom, I do sometimes have to add more Parmesan because the cheese ends up sticking to all your chicken, but the flour ends up just kind of settling to the bottom. So I do need a little bit more yogurt. So I'm gonna grab a clean spoon. Toss that in there. Get the yogurt away. Mix that up. Still doing the master method. And then bring it in. So these reheat really well. Typically, honestly, I will just eat these cold. They're so delicious. I don't even need anything else to them. But if you do feel the need, you can microwave them. You can toss them in the air fryer. They don't need very much. Kind of just like any chicken, if you overcook it too much, especially in the reheating process, you will end up drying it out. Luckily, the Parmesan is going to add some fat to it, especially when we are using, like I mentioned, plain Greek yogurt. There's not a lot of fat here. So the fat's really only going to come from your cheese. And that's when you can add a little bit more cheese to the top when you warm it up. Just kind of depends on your mood that day. You feel like seasoning's getting low, you can always add more seasoning. And I should probably show you this process too. So when I throw this in, I'm essentially just kind of bearing it and patting it. And the pressure when I pat down kind of gets the cheese and stuff to stick to it. Because it's a little bit thicker and it's not like normal breadcrumbs, it does take a little bit of efforting to make it stick. This also pairs really well with some noodles. Like this is a really good mac and cheese pairing. The other thing, I'm trying to think what else do I eat this with? My nanny family, like I'll make like 7 or 8 chicken breasts and they will eat this in like 48 hours. They love this recipe. I actually got it from them, but I've modified it over the years to kind of make it fit me. Also allow it to be a little bit healthier. Theirs originally had mayo. And like I said, if you're trying to be conscious about anything, especially your fat intake, mayo does have a lot in it. It does add extra calories if you are somebody who calorie counts. I personally recommend that if you have a small batch like I do left over, don't use the Greek yogurt if that's the option you chose. Use the mayo so you can see what it tastes like. You can taste the difference. The mayo ones do taste better because they're just yummier. But that doesn't mean these Greek yogurt ones are bad. I like these ones. Mike tends to like the other ones a little bit better is what I found, but who doesn't? Um, I'm getting close here. And if you run out of room on this parchment paper that you eyeballed would be the size of your cookie sheet, that's okay, because you can just rip off another one. And you're gonna see me make a little bit more of the dry stuff. I'm gonna add a little bit more cheese. And a little bit of pepper. I'm usually precise on the first round, and then after that, it's just like, yeah, close enough. Then I have garlic on it. Just want a little bit more flour. Don't need much. A little bit of flour. Spread that around. Perfect. And back to the consistency that I want. Remember, we want to make sure there's cheese in there, especially at the end. You don't just want like this flour ranch chicken tender. It's not very good in my opinion. I've done it. I thought, oh, it's not a big deal. We'll just use it. Yeah, it's not very great, but it's fine. It's just not my favorite. I'm just going to scrape the last couple pieces in here. And then I'm going to rinse this out because I'm going to put a little bit of mayo in here. And if you are somebody who typically cleans up as they go, I apologize. I'm not that person. I make the big mess and then I take care of it all after. So if it's currently stressing you out that we have not cleaned up, I apologize. But you can always, for those of you watching the replay, you can always pause, clean up, and come back. But we are working on timing of all of this. So once that is all in, it looks great. Put that there. That there. Okay, and I should have just enough left over. And actually, what I'm gonna do is I didn't even need this bowl, because we're just gonna take the spoon. Dollop it on there. Mix it around. These also are really good, like on top of like a salad kit, like a bag salad. Also very good. And I know I've got way too much going on this parchment paper cookie sheet thing, but that's okay. We'll separate it when it comes out. And typically anything that I think could be contaminated by chicken at the end gets washed. But as you see, we really didn't use that many dishes. The biggest thing you'll use is your big veggie bowl. And that's my wood cutting board and my veggie bowl are the two things that I have to wash by hand. Other than that, everything else goes right in the dishwasher. And you can reuse measuring cups. You can rinse them out as you go if you would like. Totally up to you and your preference. They're almost getting there, and then we'll kind of head into cleanup mode. We've got about 5 minutes left. So I'm hoping we can get these chicken completely covered. And I know I'm probably moving a little bit quicker. So if you are watching the replay, feel free to pause. Now that you've seen the process, you can always play with it. You can, yeah, play with it, change it, do what you'd like to it. My recipes are a framework. They are not set in stone, as you will read at the bottom of a lot of them. A lot of these are estimates. They are not for sure things you must follow or the recipe is going to be terrible. Like, no. I don't cook that way. I don't believe others should cook that way because it creates fear in cooking. Cooking is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be messy. And this is a fun one that when your kids are to the age where they're not going to put stuff in their mouth, like we don't want them touching raw chicken. But once they're to the age where you know they're not going to put their dirty hands in their mouth, I highly recommend doing it with them because it's fun. It's messy. It's fun. All of that. Okay. Perfect. So for the time being, I'm going to put all this over here. I'm going to rinse my hands. And I am going to grab anything that is raw and anything that is dirty and just put it in my sink. So I know that it's dirty, that it needs to be washed, needs to be taken care of. This is bad. Okay. Now I can wash my hands actually for good. Dry them. And then I'm gonna put away some of my ingredients here. My timer says we've got about 3 minutes left. If you set your own timer, yours may look a little bit different than mine, but making sure. And I'm just gonna get this picked up so I can wipe it down and then we can plate and we can all try a little bit together. If you do have multiple rounds going and you're gonna wait to officially eat till the end, totally understand. But in case you wanna try some with me, recommend getting your space cleaned up. And I know the recipe talked about how you can use salt and pepper. Like I said, I don't usually use salt, especially if you're watching your salt intake. I don't recommend adding it. But if you aren't watching your salt intake and you want to, and you think it's going to taste better, go for it. And I'm remembering that we actually set this timer for 15 minutes and not 20. So we have a little bit more buffer time than I thought we did. So we will check it here in 2.5 minutes, and then we will decide if it needs extra or what our little plan is. This. Not gonna pitch this. And by having the scraps thing, it just makes it super easy to, at the end of cooking, to just throw it right in the trash. This is laundry. I'm going to take this and move it. And typically this works a little bit better. It goes onto the cookie sheet and not onto a cutting board, but it will be okay. We're making some we're improvising over here. Okay, that's gonna go there. Wash the hands a third time. Okay, so we've got about 40 seconds and we're gonna pull them out and we're gonna take a look at it. I'm gonna spray down this counter really quick. And all I use to clean my counter is Thieves, honestly. I use Thieves for everything. I do throw a little bit of either rubbing alcohol or white vinegar, depending on where I use it. Usually for the kitchen, I will throw a little bit of white vinegar. In the gym, when I use it, I will throw a little bit of rubbing alcohol. But I have a cousin who is a Young Living rep, and she swears by it, and they've done their testing and such so that technically like it killed the chicken and all of that, and it just smells so good and it's less chemically and I love it. Okay, so we're gonna pull these out so we can take a look and see how they turned out and see if they need more time. So let's pull out that chicken first, and based on the look of mine, I'm gonna say they need a little bit more time. I can still see some of the flour, which with the Greek yogurt, you may still see the flour, but I also see that my cheese could be a little bit more melted. So I'm gonna put these back on the bottom rack, or I'm gonna put these on the bottom rack because they were on the top rack to begin with. And I'm gonna pull out my veggies. I'm gonna take a look at those while I pop those chicken nuggets or chicken tenders back in here for 5 minutes. And then we're gonna bring this over. So I like to stir it up, make sure, okay, how's the bottoms of the potatoes looking? How are the carrots looking? That's one of the first things I like to do. The next thing that we're gonna do is you wanna stick a fork in the potato and it should easily be able to slide in. And that slid in really easy. The other thing it should be able to slide into easy is that zucchini. And then finally, your carrot. Carrot was a little bit more challenging, depending on the carrot though. So it depends on your preference. I'm gonna pop mine back in for the last, while that chicken is still cooking, because I think it could use a little extra time here. And according to the recipe, it needs 20/20, and we only did 20/15. So we're gonna pop that back in. I'm gonna grab the plate that I'm gonna serve with. We'll put the stuff over here. And I am a messy cooker. Mike likes to ask me after I'm done cooking if I've just fed our entire community, because the entire kitchen is a mess. There's stuff everywhere and all of that. And my nose itches. So as we're waiting on that for a second, I had a recommendation from one of you in the group that had mentioned they were looking for a meal prep and planning notebook. And I run the meal prep and planning boot camp, and I finally pulled the trigger and I bought the book that she had been talking about. She said it outlines the boot camp like almost identically, but it's nice because it's spiral bound. So I've started to try it out. I'm kind of a little iffy still, just because I created my framework. I've created my templates for meal prep and planning, but this is pretty darn close and it's really nice. So once I get playing with it a little bit more, I will drop the link to it. But this is what my week looked like. So it was really cool to be able to plan out the week. And when I was planning it out, plan out when I was gone, when I was here, create a shopping list, creating a budget for the specific shopping list this week. So a lot of you have talked about budgets and all of that. Oh, sorry, my nose itches so bad. That you can put a budget goal. So mine was $50 for me to grab the things I needed for this. It was only $31. I think it was like 31. So you can kind of put some of those parameters in there if you are looking for something a little bit different. So I do have that. Once I get into it a little bit more, I will share the link. The other thing is I did link it in actually, I don't think I did last week. I think I linked that last week. I did not link the food scale because as soon as I bought the food scale off Amazon, Amazon's no longer selling it. So we'll see how long this lasts me. It was $8. So that's another cool thing, that if you don't have a food scale, I recommend getting one. So I'm someone who has never been, you should measure all of your food, because it's not realistic for long-term sustainability. I do really like the food scale though, to get a really good idea of what a serving of protein looks like. What does 4 ounces actually look like? Because we do use the deck of cards method, or the palm size of your hand, but it's also really good to get a good idea weight wise. And for that chicken, when I buy something really big and I need to break it down, I don't know what 2 pounds is. I just kind of guess that's usually 2 chicken breasts, but like, I don't know. So having a scale, even if it's like $10, keep it in your drawer, only using it for certain things. And when you bake, people tell me, I'm not a big baker, but people tell me that when you bake, you're more precise when you measure it on a scale, or you weigh it instead of measuring. So if you've been struggling with baking, maybe you need to start weighing your ingredients instead of measuring it. The other thing that I just bought lately that I wanted to share is I've been drinking out of my Stanley. I love my Stanley, but I was looking for a water bottle that was easier to fit in my backpack, that would not leak. And this has been my new favorite. It's Simple Modern. It's 34 ounces. This was linked in last week's, in case you missed an email. I know that for sure. This has been my new go-to water bottle. So if you are struggling with water, or you're someone who is using a lot of plastic water bottles and you would like to cut down on that plastic waste, then go ahead, grab yourself a Simple Modern water bottle. I'll send you the Amazon link, or just drop water bottle in the comments and I'll send it to you. Okay, so remember, everybody's oven cooks differently. You may have pulled your chicken tenders out and been like, okay, they're looking good. I may pull mine out here in about 10 seconds and they may look like they still need a little bit of time. If that is the case, we're gonna check that out and I may throw mine back in. If you're like, no, mine are very toasty and they look great, pull them out. We've got an older oven, sometimes the newer ovens, whether it's convection or conventional. There's like multiple different types of ovens. I don't really understand it. Part of the reason why my air fryer is one of my like new best friend, because like I feel like everything just cooks so easily in there. But let me refresh the Facebook page just real quick. Make sure I'm not missing anybody here at the end. And as you're watching the replay, you're probably watching it on YouTube or you're watching it using Searchy Copilot. Remember, if you are using that Searchy Copilot here and you're at the end and there was something you missed or there's some important information that you really wanted to go back and look for, Searchy Copilot allows you to use the little widget bubble and ask a question, and it will find the answer to that question if it was answered inside of inside the video. It will bring it right to the spot in the video where you need to go to. If you're watching on YouTube, respond in the comments, drop help, drop your favorite recipe, drop which one today was your favorite, tips, tricks, all of that. I do watch all those comments, even though it's after the fact. I do watch all of those and I do reach out to you. So I know some of you are purchasing this replay and the recipes and the tips and all the things I just shared today. And if that is the case, I want you to remember that I will reach out. I will check in on you to make sure everything's going okay. So let's grab that food, see how it is doing. Perfect. So these look delicious. I'm super excited. I cannot wait to try these ones. And then the chicken tenders, you are going to see when I bring them over that there's still some flour, and that is where you'll play around with your ratios. You'll see what works, what doesn't work. And that is because your fat content is lower in your Greek yogurt. So they're not going to look as the goal, your mayo ones and your ones that got coated really good are going to look like this. We're going to look like this one right here. Your ones that didn't get coated as good with Parmesan are going to look like that. But it doesn't hurt to sprinkle some more Parmesan. You can always do a little bit of this and top it back in the oven and let it all melt. It's totally up to you. But what we're going to do is I'm going to cut one of these open just to make sure that it looks good. Yep, that is fully cooked. So feel free. Pop it on your plate if you'd like. Eat it off the pan. Remember, it is going to be really, really hot. And I'm going to slide that off so it can cool, because I'm going to end up making another batch. And then over here, zucchini, potatoes, carrots. I love these chicken tenders. They're so good. And you can always leave them in to make them crispier. Just know that there is kind of a fine line between too crispy and like kind of where they're at now. I don't usually do my zucchinis this big. Oh, I can see they're steaming. No wait on that one. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna continue to do this on the back end. If you have more, you can either continue to do it. I do recommend that if you've battered everything, just get it completely cooked. It does reheat really well. But with that, I want to remind you that you can make really delicious food that is super flavorful, that tastes delicious, that it just isn't boring. And I hope you enjoyed today's little cooking demo, hearing some tips, tricks, why we use the mayo versus Greek yogurt, with making sure things are the right sizes so everything cooks evenly, things like that, and some of the other things that I kind of trickled in there. So with that, I want to remind you that if you have any questions at all, or you want to do another cooking demo and you've got specific recipes you want me to go through, or things in the recipe book you want me to go through, please let me know. I'm happy to do all of it. So with that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. And as always, let me know what I can do to help, and have a fantastic day. I will talk to you soon.